A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to be on the faculty of a ministry training school. One of the courses I taught was entitled Cultivating Intimacy with God. The primary purpose of this class was to introduce the students to the reality of God's extravagant love for them. The course was also designed to help them experience God as their Father and learn to enjoy Him out of an understanding of His enjoyment of them. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a student at the end of one particular semester. A young woman approached me the last day of the course and said, "S.J., if I've learned anything in your class, I've discovered that God is cool." I don't know what kind of response she expected from me, but without any hesitation, I said, "You're exactly right. God is cool." I just wish more of His children knew it. The moment the words escaped from my mouth, I instinctively knew that if certain Christians had heard me, they would have been deeply troubled by what I had just said. More than likely, they would have chided me for using a common slang word in referring to God. But the more I've thought about what this young woman said, the more I've become convinced that she was right. She wasn't meaning to be disrespectful. Instead, there were things said in my class that had opened her heart to God's personality and His extravagant affections for her. For the first time in her life, she was able to picture Him smiling over her, celebrating who He had made her to be. She was enjoying the fact that she felt loved and accepted, and in trying to express what she was experiencing, all she could say was, "God is cool." If I were to ask you to describe God, what words would you use? Would you even be able to imagine Him having an appealing personality? Maybe things you've heard over the years about His character have left you either scared, bored, or both. Maybe you've been taught that God is to be feared and not enjoyed. Or, for some reason, you have thought of Him as somewhat static, the one who sits on a throne in eternity, unapproachable and devoid of any real passion. Maybe you've even come to view Him merely as an authority figure that keeps things in order and punishes those who disobey Him. Over the centuries, Christian theologians have spent countless hours contemplating the nature of God. From their studies, they have discovered a number of things about His character that they have felt were clearly revealed in the Scriptures. These attributes of God have come to be called divine perfections. While the list has varied to some degree from one theologian to another, it usually has included the following: God is infinite, sovereign, holy, all-powerful, omnipotent, all-wise, omniscient, personally present everywhere, omnipresent, and immutable, unchangeable. But as profound as these truths are, there are things about God's nature that have been clearly omitted from the traditional list. For example, what about His joy? Isn't joy an attribute? If He is love, then can't we assume that He loves joyfully? If God is holy, then can't we also believe that He's perfect in His beauty and splendor? What about His meekness and humility? And shouldn't His creativity also be considered an attribute? For some reason, these aspects of God's nature, as well as others, have often been overlooked or ignored down through the centuries. Years ago, I decided to study and reflect on the Scriptures for the primary purpose of gaining new insights into God's fascinating personality. From the moment I made that decision, my life has never been the same. I have become intrigued by God. I think about Him all the time. I often wonder what He's really like. At times, I find myself trying to fathom the infinite depths of the Lord's splendor and beauty. Yet at other times, I simply imagine Him smiling at me. I picture Him laughing, leaping, and celebrating what His grace has accomplished in my life.